Welcome to the fourth lesson in the Job Development webinar series. In today's lesson, we will discuss how to make a good first impression. It is always very important to make a good first impression in every situation, but especially when attending your interview. This is because a positive experience with you will have a long-lasting effect on the interviewer. As soon as we meet someone new, the first thing that we notice is how he or she is dressed. If the person is dressed neatly and appears well groomed, we will remember that just as much as we will remember if they were dirty and smelly. When you meet them the second or third time, the memory of the first encounter will dominate your thoughts about them. So, if you meet the nicely dressed person for the second time, and they look untidy and unclean, you will automatically recall how nicely they looked the first time. And you will do the same thing with the person who looked untidy when you first met them, but looks clean now. There is a saying that the first impression is a lasting impression, and that holds true for every situation. Now, let's discuss what professional behavior looks like. When meeting the person who will be interviewing you, you should extend your hand and give a firm handshake. If you're not sure how to give a proper handshake, try role-playing with whomever is helping you prepare for your interview. Throughout the interview, you will want to keep eye contact with the interviewer. Because this can be very challenging for some people, it is important to have your job coach present at the interview so they can explain that keeping eye contact is a challenge and not a sign of rudeness. During the interview, try to have a calm body. This means that you will try to sit as quietly as possible without fidgeting with your hands, your watch, the folder in your hand, or anything else that you may have in your possession. This can be distracting to the interviewer and cause them not to hear you speak about your skills and experience. Because you will almost always be sitting during an interview, the way you sit in the chair is also important because that counts as part of your first impression upon the interviewer. So you need to sit up straight with both hands in your lap and both feet planted firmly on the ground. This will demonstrate that you are giving your undivided attention to what the interviewer is saying. We will move on to discuss what unprofessional behavior would look like in an interview setting. Cell phones, and especially smartphones, with all the capability of a desktop computer, are very helpful to everyone. However, they are so distracting and so addictive that many of us cannot take our attention away from them for even a minute. There have been instances where people are so fascinated with what they are viewing on their phone screen that they are walking or driving and cause accidents. Many of you must have seen signs and advertisements that tell us not to text and drive. So during an interview, it is very important to turn your phone completely off and leave it in your pocket. It's always going to be a distraction. Being on your cell phone during an interview is an absolute no-no because this clearly demonstrates two things. You have no manners and you are not interested in the meeting. Of course, that's never the impression you want to give. Another distraction in an interview is someone chewing gum. Chewing gum during an interview is considered offensive because it shows poor manners. There are some people who make loud, annoying noises when they pop their chewing gum with their open mouths. This is not only distracting, but very rude. So it is always best to enjoy your chewing gum when you are with friends and on your own time. Eating any kind of food during an interview is also a no-no. Unless you are specifically meeting your interviewer for lunch, There should be no signs of food during your interview. This means no opening of a bag of chips and no unwrapping of a candy bar. The interviewer should always have your undivided attention during your interview. Once the meeting is over and you have shaken hands as you say goodbye, you are then free to eat whatever snack you may have brought for the ride home. This is particularly for those who are riding PomTran or another public transportation system who may have to wait a few minutes for their pickup. Another word of caution regarding unprofessional behavior is arguing with your interviewer or talking over your interviewer. Always listen politely so you can respond accurately. If the interviewer is complete with asking his or her questions and then asks if you have any questions, that means it's your turn to speak. But remember, always stay on topic. This means keep the conversation about the position and its responsibilities. So, your interview seems to be going really well. You and the interviewer are getting along, and the business air is slowly fading away, making room for casual conversation. Don't forget where you are and what your purpose there is. Always be on your guard not to overshare your personal business or get too deep in the interviewer's personal business. Okay, let's talk now about some inappropriate conversation topics that should be avoided during your interview, as well as in the workplace environment. In all professional settings, talking about your current dating life or your past romances is never appropriate. These topics should be shared with your personal friends outside of the workplace. Never forget that you are still at your interview and your purpose is to get a job, not discuss your love life. Let's move on to the topic of discussing money in your interview. At the end of an interview, it is always acceptable to discuss the compensation or salary for the position. However, it should never be the first thing you introduce as soon as you meet with your interviewer. You do not want the employer feeling as if you are only interested in the dollar amount attached to the position, and you really do not care about the business itself. It also is not appropriate to discuss how much money you have in your personal bank account or in your wallet. That has nothing to do with your interview. There is no doubt that you have probably heard about the two topics no one should ever discuss in public settings, which are religion and politics. That is true for both an interview and the workplace. These are what is often described as hot button issues because people are passionate about their personal religion and personal politics. You never want to appear to be attacking someone's beliefs because you do not agree with them. So, to prevent any hard feelings or hurt feelings, it is always best to resist introducing these topics or partaking in any discussion about them, unless you are with your close friends and family. Another topic that you should try to stay far away from is gossiping. The very nature of it is ugly, and being a part of this practice can be very dangerous in every social relationship or setting. You may be wondering how you could be considered as gossiping during an interview. Well, gossip takes many forms. You may share something about a family member, someone in your social group, or something from a prior job without realizing that you are gossiping. This would not be a first impression you want to leave with your potential employer, because you would have clearly demonstrated that you do not respect others' privacy. For companies, that could be detrimental, since many of their business dealings are usually of a confidential nature. Someone's true character is always revealed when they participate in gossiping. So, now you've left the interview, feeling great, because you think it went well. You followed all the steps to making a good impression, and you are confident that you are a strong candidate for the job. However, there is one more thing to complete. You're making a good impression, and that is writing a letter of thanks to your interviewer. Since electronic mail, or email for short, is now one of the quickest forms of communication, you can send a short but professional email once you get home. It can be something as simple as, "Dear Mr. Jones, I am very appreciative of the time you took today to meet with me and discuss the possibility of me joining your company. I enjoyed our meeting immensely and am excited to hopefully become a member of your team. Should you have any questions, please feel free to contact me." Now, because this is a professional letter, you will not end with anything like "love," "with love," "your boy Jack," or "your girl Susie." You will simply write "respectfully" and then put your name under that word, skipping a line. If you choose to handwrite a letter instead, that's also acceptable. But always remember to provide your contact information. I know you may be thinking that this is already on your resume, but you always want to show that you are willing to go the extra step. So instead of causing that person to go and search for your resume with your information, you will have already provided it in your thank you letter. This small move will show the interviewer that you can be a good asset to the company. It can be a very anxious time waiting to hear back from an employer after an interview. Though you may have left feeling great, waiting to hear back can cause you to second guess how it all went, and that may cause you to want to call the employer. However, the proper thing to do is wait a week or two before making any contact. Remember, there are usually several people applying for the position, and it is only fair that each person gets an interview where they can speak about their skills and experience, just like you did. So, you need to be a little patient and wait. It will never be considered appropriate to call or email an employer every single day after your interview. In doing this, you are guaranteeing that you won't be called back for either a second interview or for the job itself, because this may be thought of as being impatient and annoying. No one wants to be thought of like that by someone who could be their boss. Remember how we talked earlier in this series about certain behaviors revealing our true character? This would be one of those behaviors. The best thing you can do after an interview is to continue your job search with a positive attitude. An interview doesn't guarantee that you will get the job. It helps you understand the process of getting a job as you meet with the interviewer. If you should be fortunate enough to be granted other interviews from other places of business while you wait for an answer from the first interview, you should always show up. However, should the timing of a new interview conflict with a job offer from your first interview, always be sure to call and cancel the new interview. You always want to make a good impression. Let's say that you take the job offer from the place you were really interested in, but once you got there, you didn't like the environment. You can always check back with an interview that you canceled. There's no guarantee that the job will still be available, but they will remember that you had good manners and called them to cancel. This brings us to the end of our lesson on how to make a good first impression in an interview. We went over the physical behaviors you should have as well as inappropriate behaviors to avoid. We also discussed topics that should never come up in conversation during an interview, as well as what you should do after an interview. Now go out there and make a great impression on your future employer.